Good morning. My name is Joe, and my pronouns are he and him, and as most of you know, I grew up in the great state of Pennsylvania, which, among other things, is Nittany Lion country. A Nittany Lion is a cougar. That's the mascot for the Pennsylvania State University sports team, most famous for its high-level football program. I've never been much of a college football fan, but I did have a chance to go to a Penn State home game once in my early 20s. Beaver Stadium, 106,000 people, over 120 decibels. Nobody wearing a watermelon on their head, but still pretty good place. Consistently voted one of the best football crowds in the USA. At Penn State games, there's a student section on one side of the field, and then the general public are on the other side and everywhere else. And throughout the game, the student section starts a chant. "We are," they yell, and "Penn State," everyone else yells back. Penn State has a great football program, so-so for creative writing. It's simple, but it's incredibly electric. I might want to share this with you through a video from 20 years ago. I remember nothing about the game itself. I wasn't much of a fan. I did not attend the university, but I remember that feeling. In that moment, I was Penn State. We all knew who we were, no question. That's the energy that I'm bringing to the church in the next few weeks, in my imagination at least. We are picking up the journey we started earlier this year in the Book of Belonging Illustrated Bible. And the theme of the next few stories is identity, foundations, remembering who we are. The stories each week come from the book of Exodus mostly. The stories of how the Hebrew people grew from a small clan to a large nation. How God brought them out of slavery in Egypt, led them through the wilderness to a new homeland in Palestine, and shaped them into the people of God with a code of ethics and a formal religion and a national identity. These are foundational stories for the nation of Israel, and it's a tradition that continues to shape the modern Jews as well as the political state of Israel, and us too as Christians who share a common spiritual ancestry with the Jews. It's a long and complicated history and a complicated present reality. Each Sunday throughout this series, we will carry a theme beginning with "We are." Not all of them will chant very easily. We are a community. I will try to work out a better chant before we get to that one in a few weeks. But I hope that spirit resonates, that at the end of each service, we all walk away from this time together going, yes, that is who we are. At least in part, because identity is complicated. The other thing besides the chant that I do remember from that Penn State football game is that after one of those chants, the drunk guy dancing on the bleachers behind us stumbled and dumped his beer all over us. So much for that moment of solidarity. We are Penn State, but not if that loser is part of it. I mean, kick him out. He doesn't belong. Or if he does, well, then I'm not sure that I want to anymore. There are a few of those moments in these stories too. Is that really who we are? I'm not sure I can be part of that. Sometimes the foundations of our faith are actually shameful, controversial, problematic. And yet, we are. We are part of this story, and this story is part of us. Today, as we've experienced already, we jump back into the book of belonging with one more tale of the founders of the book of Genesis. Jacob, son of Isaac and Rebekah, grandson of Abraham and Sarah. Is everyone familiar with Jacob? He's a pretty well-known character, I think. Younger twin, tries to steal the family inheritance from his older brother Esau. Jacob gets caught, he runs for his life into the wilderness. He gets tired, he lays down, uses a stone for a pillow, and has a dream where he writes the greatest rock ballad of all time, Stairway to Heaven. It's hard to keep up today. Jacob goes next to live with his sheep and goat herding uncle Laban. He marries his cousin Leah and her sister, also his cousin Rachel. Jacob has 4 children with Leah, 2 children with Rachel's assistant Bilhah, 2 children with Leah's assistant Zilpah, 3 more children with Leah, and finally Jacob's favorite wife Rachel gives birth to his favorite son Joseph, the OG. And a while later, a final son with Rachel named Benjamin. So this is Jacob's life. 4 women, 13 children, and a whole lot of ugly goats. The ugly part is another story for another time. After 20 years and 12 children, the 13th wasn't yet on the way at this point, Jacob had worn out his welcome with Laban. So Jacob took his family and his flocks and went back towards Palestine, to the land of his grandfather and father and his giant angry brother Esau. Jacob was understandably worried that Esau might be holding a grudge about the whole inheritance heist situation. And so Jacob sent like hundreds more of goats, sheep, cows, camels, and donkeys on ahead as an apology gift to Esau. And then the night before he was to confront Esau, Jacob paced by himself beside a river. The details are sparse. Here's the story directly from Genesis 32. A man wrestled with Jacob until dawn. When the man saw that he couldn't defeat Jacob, he grabbed Jacob's thigh and tore a muscle in Jacob's thigh as he wrestled with him. The man said, "Let me go, because dawn is breaking." But Jacob said, "I won't let you go until you bless me." He said to Jacob, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then he said, "Your name won't be Jacob any longer, but Israel, meaning one who struggles with God, because you struggled with God and with men and won." Jacob also asked and said, "Tell me your name." But he said, "Why do you ask for my name?" And he blessed Jacob there. Jacob named the place Peniel, because I have seen God face to face, and my life has been saved. The sun rose as Jacob passed Peniel, limping because of his thigh. So that's the story. The next day, Jacob did face Esau, finally, and Esau was thrilled to see his brother. No apologies necessary. Esau was happy and healthy and wealthy. He had no hard feelings. He was delighted to meet Jacob's family and see how well they were doing for themselves. And so Jacob became neighbors with Esau, and Jacob and his family lived happily ever after. Not really. Joseph and his siblings had a few troubles way down in Egypt land, but that's another story, the story of the next generation. As for Jacob, I've always related to the guy. He's almost as passive-aggressive and conflict avoidant as I am. He would try anything rather than having a direct conversation. Why talk to your brother about a fair way to divide the family fortune between twins? Why talk when you can try to swindle it out of him with a well-timed bowl of hearty stew? Why talk to your father about your inheritance concerns? Far better to put goat hair on your arms so that the old man might think that you are the older brother and involuntarily give you the blessing instead. Or, my favorite, when Jacob went to Laban and wanted to marry Rachel, he agreed to work for her father, for Laban, for 7 years to earn the right of marriage. But after 7 years of hard labor, on the day of the wedding, Laban swapped out the bride for her sister. And rather than confronting Laban and demanding to marry the woman he actually loved, Jacob stayed married to Leah and agreed to work for 7 more years if Laban would let him marry Rachel as well. "Oh, I'm sorry for the misunderstanding. It's probably my fault. Okay, sure, I'll work for 7 more years, no bother. Rachel, Leah, okay, it's good, we're good." I'm not quite sure that's how it went. But that is the pattern for Jacob. He backs down. He lies, he runs away, he tries to find workarounds and backdoors to getting what he wants. A heel grabber. That's the literal translation of the name Jacob. Following behind, holding on tightly, but from underneath. He's kind of devious. He's definitely avoidant. That's Jacob. Or it was, because here in this moment by the river, Jacob engaged the struggle. It is unclear whether this was a dream or a vision or a physical wrestling match. Whatever it was, it's a pretty clear premonition of the coming day's confrontation with Esau. For his whole life, Jacob has been avoiding confrontation, and this one specifically. He's fearful that he will lose again. He's maybe even thinking about running away. He'd sent everybody else off already. Maybe he could just sneak away and avoid this time. But no, that's not who he was anymore. He was no longer the fresh-faced kid with the goat hair costume. He was an adult with his own beard, with responsibilities and experience and power, proven strength forged over 20 years as a father and husband and a shepherd and goat baron. Jacob was actually starting to realize his strength earlier in the journey. He had started by avoiding confrontation again. Tensions after 20 years had grown high between Jacob and Laban, and especially Jacob's cousins. Jacob's wealth was growing faster than everyone else's. Everybody was upset with him. He was taking what belonged to everybody else. And so while Laban was out of town, Jacob gathered his family and his flocks, and they snuck away. Eventually, Laban came back, and he saw that Jacob had left with his daughters and grandchildren and half of Laban's business. So Laban went and chased him down. When Laban caught up, Jacob finally stood up for himself. He gave a great rant. "You accuse me of stealing your daughters and your flocks, but I've earned all of this. I worked my tail off for you. I've been a good husband and father, relative to the culture, and you've benefited from all of my effort and my faithfulness. Your wealth, your honor, your family has grown because of me. Justice is on my side. Let us part ways in peace." Jacob stood up, and Laban backed down. Jacob made a treaty with Laban. He swore oaths to take care of Laban's daughters and their children. And they parted on Jacob's terms, as friends, a family at long last. Score one for the son-in-law. Jacob had come a long way, and now facing his fears about Esau, that night and then in person the next day was the final challenge. It represented vindication and confirmation that Jacob had grown and changed. He may have tried to avoid conflict, but the struggles had always been there. They'd always caught up to him anyway. And now Jacob met them, in his own way for sure, but he had struggled and come through. He wasn't a heel grabber anymore. He was one who struggled and endured. Yisra, contender, persister, wrestler, survivor. Yisrael, one who struggles with God. That's a strong name. It's not about who comes out on top. It's not saying that Jacob beat God into submission. To struggle with God sounds like it might be oppositional, like God is the opponent that Jacob has subdued. But that's not the language or the metaphor here. Jacob struggles with God, alongside God, meeting God in and through the struggle. Jacob has come into his own, shaped by the struggle. He had become stronger than he knew, strong enough to stand and face his problems, to feel his feelings, to know his vulnerability, and to stand anyway. Strong enough to experience God directly, face to face, not grasping for an external blessing, but knowing God as an internal reality, as part of his identity, one who struggles with God. Jacob was shaped by the struggle throughout his life, and this moment is an acknowledgement of his maturity, his physical and emotional homecoming, marked by self-acceptance. Jacob was integrating the struggle into his identity, letting it mark him and moving on, even with a limp. That's the story. Struggle is unavoidable, but it can be the core of who we are in a positive way. Jacob's 12 sons grew into the 12 tribes that took on this new name, Israel, the ones who struggle with God. That was the chosen identity of the people of God. We are contenders, survivors, challengers, wrestlers. And that's very much the biblical story of the children of Israel. as a band of slaves in the empire of Egypt, as the 12 tribes that wandered the wilderness and colonized a homeland of their own, as the little kingdom that could, rising and falling and rising again in relative obscurity against their truly powerful neighbors, and as a people in exile, creatively preserving their history, faith, and identity while scattered across the Babylonian, Persian, Greek, and then Roman empires. The story of the descendants of Israel is all about the struggle, a people who refused to go away, who stayed together and pushed back against the dominant cultures and militaries and political powers across history. And that identity has carried on past the biblical timeline for Jews throughout the centuries up until now. And that story got really complicated when the Christian church grew out of Judaism. We're kind of the little sibling that grew up to dominate the family that raised us. Christianity became the empire in ways that the children of Israel never did. And it's really complicated then when we claim these Jewish stories as our spiritual heritage. There are parallels between the stories of the Jews and the stories of some Christian minority groups. We Mennonites have our own struggles, our stories of struggle against empire, stories of being scattered and struggling, working hard to preserve a countercultural faith and identity. As a religious group, Mennonites have also been greatly shaped by the struggle, often for tremendous good, not just in the European history of Anabaptists, but also the global Anabaptism community around the world today, especially where the majority of Anabaptists live and keep the faith in the global South. The ones who struggle is an identity that resonates with many Anabaptists, including Mennonites here in Canada. Our identity in Mennonite Church Saskatchewan has been very much shaped by the struggles of those who've gone before us, our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, whether we're related or not. We are the ones who struggle. But it's also important today to name that most of Christianity has not taken on this identity or has interpreted it very differently. Most of Christian history has been about winning the struggle, coming out on top, and then dominating the ones underneath. We struggle to gain God's blessing, and then victorious with God on our side, we use our strength to rule. It's not directly drawn, I don't think, from this story of Jacob, although you could read the story of Jacob wrestling through that lens if you wanted to. This domination-based Christianity comes more, I think, from this overall sense that, well, God is almighty, God is the King of Kings, God is our God, and so then that gives us the right to rule as God's representatives. From that perspective, to be the people of God means to claim and rule, to struggle, to overcome, and then rule with the power of God. And there is a thread of that in the Bible for sure. But I think that's in tension with this identity and history of Israel as the ones who struggle. I think the Bible is pretty direct in its warnings against those who try to claim God's power as their own. Lots more history I could get into there. Well, we've heard, this isn't history, we've all heard again this past month of the language and traditions of the Christian faith being weaponized by powerful men seeking to dominate. And so today I feel the need to remind all of us that they've got it wrong. The people of God are the ones who struggle, not the ones who start wars and dominate enemies and make the rules in their own image. They've replaced God with power and violence. After this wrestling match, Jacob didn't go out to meet Esau with a sword of epic fury. Jacob went with a limp. He sent gifts and warm words. He groveled before his brother and begged forgiveness. Jacob put himself at Esau's mercy with confidence because now he knew who he was. He didn't need to win. He didn't need bravado or tricks or overwhelming violence because he had met God in the struggle. When we are secure in our identity and our faith, we don't need to dominate. Hello, big brother. I see that you have won. I acknowledge your strength. May I join you in celebrating your blessing. And Esau, who had also grown and found security in his own identity, embraced Jacob and welcomed his family. Not every relationship needs to be a contest for dominance. And then, as these things go, Jacob actually ran away again. Esau invited him, come back, live with me and your father. Let's bring our families together and we'll make a life together. And Jacob went back to his lying ways. Oh, sure, yeah, you go on first and we'll be right behind you. And as soon as Esau was gone, Jacob led his crew off in a different direction and set up his family a few towns away, which might have been for the best. But it's not quite what God had invited him into. Sometimes the struggle is against ourselves. So that's the call today, to embrace the struggle, to expect it and integrate it as part of who we are. Not to downplay or minimize it either. Well, it's not that bad compared to what it could have been, or I have it good compared to them over there. Struggle is struggle. Pain is pain, regardless of magnitude. Every life has a struggle, and this is an invitation to acknowledge and face it for what it is, to let it shape us, for better and for worse. Not everything that doesn't kill us makes us stronger. Some struggles bring devastating scars and wounds that never fully heal. And yet we struggle with God. Throughout his life, Jacob was regularly finding God in places he did not expect. And he loved, I love this guy. He marked these places with big rocks and made piles of stones and poured oil over them as a blessing. Look, everybody, God is here too. On the run in the wilderness, in his conflict with Uncle Laban, on his eventual homecoming, even in the death of his beloved Rachel, piles of rocks. See, God is here too. And in this wrestling match, one more time, oh, God, it's you. You're here too. This struggle does not happen outside of God's presence and protection. God is found in the heart of the struggle. I would say that's true for us too. Whatever your struggle is individually, God is present with you in it. And whatever shared struggles we might name, God meets us there as well. Not only in outcomes and achievements, not only at the end, but here and now, in the middle, in the struggle. We are the ones who struggle. There's a blessing in this section of the Book of Belonging that I hope will become a refrain that echoes throughout this series. Now it's time to go and choose God. Now it's time to go and bless everyone else. You will feel fear. When you feel fear, remember. You will feel lost. When you feel lost, remember. You will feel shame. When you feel shame, remember. God's love stretches in both directions, into all your yesterdays and all your tomorrows. God is the same, and God will be with you wherever you go. Remember to remember to remember. Amen.